China, and in here, Stephen, of course, in Kenya. And then we'll open for a panel discussion, and we will seek your question also from the audience. We have probably about 40 people online, so we'll look as well for your inputs, contributions, as well questions for the panel. So don't hesitate also to write questions in the chat or to ask to take the floor once the panel discussion is over. The panel today is composed by Siddhartha Chatterjee, apologies, UN Resident Coordinator in China and previously in Kenya, so probably many of you know him well. We have Dr. Stephen Jackson, UN Resident Coordinator in Kenya. And joining after welcoming remarks from our distinguished UN Resident Coordinator, we have Ms. Judy Nino, Executive Director, United Nations Global Compact Network in Kenya. We have Mr. Bai Xiaofeng, Executive Deputy Secretary General, China Africa Business Council. And then we have Sakina Asman, who is representing Patrick Nyangwezo, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And not least is Dr. Tei Kai, sorry if I pronounced the name incorrectly, which is Program Officer of FAO in Kenya. So without further ado, and I will give the floor first to Sid, the UN Resident Coordinator in China, for his welcoming remarks. And Sid, if you can open the mic, I think we tried and the sound works. So thanks for joining us from afar, and we look forward for your introduction. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much, and I hope you can hear me loud and clear. First of all, I'd like to thank Stephen Jackson, the UN Resident Coordinator in Kenya, for inviting us to participate. And as you can see, I'm not alone in this. We have the American Chambers of Commerce in China present here, listening to us, the British Chambers of Commerce, honored to be joined by the Malawi ambassador, who's also the chair of the SADC group in China. We have the ambassador of the African Union. We have the China-Africa Business Council. We have the rep of UNIDO and the rep of UNIDO IPO. So we've come with a pretty broad group of people to participate and listen in and take part in this very, very important discussion. And why is this important? When you look at the entire eastern geography of Africa, I'm not just talking about the Horn of Africa, I'm stretching it down all the way to the SADC region. This is the region which I would term as the sweet spot of geopolitics and socioeconomic progress. So, and why do I say this? I recall the words of the former US ambassador to Kenya. And he said something very interesting in February of 2020 when President Uhuru Kenyatta visited Washington, D.C., and I've taken a delegation from Kenya to the Silicon Valley and then to Washington to look at what we could be doing to bridge the Silicon Valley and the Silicon Savannah together. And he said something very interesting, Johnny Carson. And he said that Kenya, which I will then put into the Horn of Africa context, can have several best friends, the United States, China, Great Britain, European Union, and others. They need to do what is best for them to progress their economy, build their infrastructure, and push their country forward. And I think this resonates beautifully to what the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has said. He has said that, and I quote, he says, Africa is a source of hope for the world, and collaboration between the UN and the African Union is stronger than ever. This is where the UN can play its true role as a multilateral platform, as a convener, as a connector, and a catalyzer. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm serving in a country which is quite remarkable on every count. They've lifted close to 800 million people out of poverty in a span of 40 years. A per capita GDP in 1979, which was at a mere $180. In fact, Kenya had a higher per capita GDP than China. And China today is at about $12,500 and is likely to reach 25,000 per capita GDP by 2025. And this dramatic growth has been possible because what I used to say in Kenya, the 3 Ps, political will, the right public policies, and the partnerships it's forged in order to accelerate this kind of growth. Now, as the largest investor in and largest trading partner for Africa, China, I can tell you, is firmly committed to the African continent in fulfilling its development goals under the South-South Cooperation Framework, which, as you know, the UN is actively part of, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and the African Union Agenda of 2063 and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Now, the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, or FOCAC, is perhaps the important political process for the cooperation between China and the continent. And the UN has a promising role in forging these transformative partnerships to unearth, for example, blended financing to promote Africa's development. The UN in Africa has worked closely with development partners, in China, has worked closely with development partners to launch two initiatives, an SDG partnership platform, which is like a 2.0 version of the platform that we have in Kenya, and an international center of excellence for applied sustainable development solutions in Africa. So the Global Development Initiative, as we heard, provides another opportunity for the United Nations to work closely with China and other countries, including those in Africa, under the 8 priority areas such as poverty alleviation, food security, vaccines and pandemic control, development financing, climate action, green development, industrialization, digital economy and connectivity, with the potential to boost the sustainable development globally. The Horn of Africa countries are perhaps one of the most promising areas for this kind of transformative growth. It is very young. The median age is at about 15. The population in the Horn of Africa itself will grow to about 700 million by 2050. And it is perhaps one of the fastest growing economies currently. Now, if you refer to the UN's Comprehensive Regional Prevention Strategy for the Horn of Africa, which is composed of 4 key pillars. First, regional peace and security. Secondly, resilience and socio-economic development. Thirdly, inclusive and responsive government. And fourthly, sustainable natural resources development and climate resilience. China plays a lot of importance on the development of the Horn of Africa, as you've seen when the State Council and Foreign Minister Wang Yi proposed the initiative of peaceful development in the Horn of Africa earlier this year, and a special envoy on the Horn of Africa was appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Xu Bing, who conducted a tour of the Horn of Africa immediately after his appointment. Now, through the discussion with the Horn of Africa countries, some of the initial discussions have collaboration areas that we see has great potential are: number one, climate change, especially in view of the upcoming COP27 to be hosted by Egypt in November 2022. Secondly, partnerships. With only 8 years left to achieve the SDGs, Africa needs many more partners, from bilateral to multilateral, to open up new partnerships, to scale up and accelerate financing for development. Thirdly is digital transformation. And fourthly is COVID response. And when I talk about COVID response, I'm talking about the primacy of focusing on SDG 3 and making sure that universal health coverage becomes an absolute reality, because we've seen the direct correlation between health and economics. So therefore, the Development Cooperation Offices for Asia and Africa, the UNCTs, will conduct a comprehensive mapping of opportunities between May and July, focusing on these areas, on what, how, whom, scope, and we've already had a kind of a zero draft taking shape. So the concept of China and the Horn of Africa opportunities for a transformative partnership will be jointly prepared. So our panel, hopefully today, will help to identify concrete areas of collaboration anchored in the FOCAC and AU 2063 priority. One of the things I want to say, ladies and gentlemen, and this takes me back to the time when I was the head of the UN Population Fund, a partnership between Huawei, Merck from the US, Kenya Healthcare Federation, Safaricom from Kenya, GlaxoSmithKline from the UK, and Philips from the Netherlands had such an enduring impact in reducing maternal mortality ratio in some of the highest burden counties. That is precisely the kind of competitive advantages that the UN can actually bring to converge and bring to bear for maximum impact, not out of a position of charity, but to make a sustainable development project. So with that, I thank you all for inviting us, but please know that as the UN family here in China, we remain fully committed to work with China, in China, and with the partners around to make a difference in the Horn of Africa. Thank you.
President Coordinator, Sid, for these very enlightening remarks, and also to actually mentioning already some transformative partnerships and how they can deliver, as well as some of the larger priorities and the role of the UN in facilitating this connection. It's my honor now to call on stage Dr. Jackson, the UN Resident Coordinator for Kenya, to give the welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Max. Excellencies and friends, greetings, good morning, and getting on for good afternoon for others, I think. An enormous pleasure to be with you, and I cannot begin without saluting Sid, your extraordinary leadership, first for the years that you led UN Kenya to really prepare the ground for this kind of conversation we're having this morning. And now, so fortuitously for us, at the other end of the line in China, leading with great aplomb there and helping us to make this really vital partnership between China and Africa. So thank you so much for that. Friends, I'll be very brief because we really want to hear from the experts on the panel. But let me tell you that I arrived back from travel late last night to Jomo Kenyatta Airport, and it was 30 minutes only from the moment that the plane touched down to the moment that I was in bed at home. And why is that? Because I was able to use this extraordinary new highway that's literally opened in the last couple of days, built by China in partnership with Kenya from Jomo Kenyatta to the main part of town. And for me, it was a visceral indication of the potential of the partnership that we're talking about today. Quite an extraordinary thing. Sid, you've already emphasized China's stellar record in lifting 800 million people out of poverty in 4 decades. Very, very inspiring, and as you say, coming initially from a set of economic parameters that looked very much like those that Kenya also faced at independence. So there is much to be learned from and much to be gained from an intensified partnership with China from this part of the world. Let me say the obvious thing, and I'm going to be very partisan, sorry, I know we're talking about the Horn of Africa and the entire continent, but let me talk about the part of Africa that I support, Kenya. Kenya's geography speaks for itself. Kenya sits at the middle point, the entrepot, if you like, between the enormous opportunities that emerge economically to the east, in the Gulf, in South Asia and Southeast Asia, and also the enormous opportunities that exist to the west within Central Africa. And I note in particular the accession of the DR Congo to the East African community just in the last month under the Kenyan presidency of the EAC. So there is a massive market to be reached in Central Africa through Kenya, through Kenya's ports, Kenya's infrastructure, Kenya's expertise, Kenya's know-how. So what we can see is the potential for a bi-directional partnership to mutual gain. On the one hand, through Kenya, from Central Africa to the enormous markets to the east, and on the other hand, from know-how, investment, capacity, expertise in the east into Kenya and into Central Africa. And all of that, of course, founded in South-South partnership. And I think it's fair to say that the potential for that partnership has been there for decades, but we really haven't maximized it to Africa's benefit yet. So that's the challenge in front of us. What do we need to be able to do that, and what are the key principles? Well, certainly one of them must be that we leave no one behind. And there, again, China's example of having achieved that extraordinary growth over 4 decades, but having done it inclusively, so that according to the World Bank, as rural poverty in China fell from 96% in 1980 to less than 1% of the population by 2019. That was not just urban centers, but that was across the totality of that enormous country that is China. And so I think there's lots to be learned about the technology for inclusive rapid development from the Chinese example. Also, how to work with the private sector. And that, as you know, part of Sid's legacy to us here in UN Kenya has been this extraordinary SDG partnership platform that helps us to leverage both domestic and international private sector actors to drive towards the SDGs. So that is something that we can also learn from the Chinese example, because it's been very much a partnership between the private sector and the public sector that has engendered this miraculous transformation of the People's Republic. As I conclude, then let me come back to the UN's role. So here in Kenya, we want to anchor this renewed partnership with partners like China in our SDG partnership platform, created by the government of Kenya and UN Kenya in 2017, and that gives birth to innovative public-private partnerships for the SDGs. That's where we will anchor this work. That's where we will help to crowd in both public and private sector actors to drive across the kinds of sectors that Sid has already mentioned show so much promise. The health sector, agriculture, food security and nutrition, high-tech, digitalization, the green transition. I think there is massive potential for us to exploit. I've talked about Kenya, but Kenya as the door to the region, not just to Central Africa, but to the Horn of Africa as well through the Lapset corridor, the new Lamu port. So, so much for us to do and create together. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from the experts in this on the panel as to how we go forward. Asante sana.
Many thanks, Stephen Sid, for giving these introductory remarks and setting the stage for the panel, and as well as explaining the role of the United Nations as a catalyzer and a facilitator for many opportunities to come. Before we get to the core of the program, let me ask to play a video that highlights the particular opportunities and challenges in the agricultural value chain. So if I can ask our IT to play a short video and panelists to get ready, please. I'm not sure that is the video. I think maybe colleagues can, the video should be from FAO on agriculture.
If we can't get the video, maybe we should take the first panelist. In the interest of time.
Yeah, in the interest of time, let's play maybe before we get to the question and answer, if colleagues can take care of it. So I'm moving with actual private sector or representative of the private sector. We have named them. This summit is about mobilizing private finance for the SDGs. So particularly interesting to see and understand what is the perspective of alliances, of enterprises and companies into this collaboration between China and the Horn of Africa. So my first question is to Mr. Xiao Feng, the Executive Deputy Secretary General of the China-Africa Business Council. Mr. Xiao Feng, we look for your reflection. As we know, the COVID pandemic has hit. We are coming out of it. This is one of our first in-person meeting, and it's evidence of that, but has implied many different response strategies from business, and also in the collaboration between the state and the business. So we really look at the reflections and the recommendations from the China-Africa Business Council and your advice on strengthening the collaboration between China and Horn of Africa. So please, if you can take the floor, and we look forward to hear your thoughts and reflections.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you, Mr. Sid, invite the CBC join this very good event. I'm Bai from the China-Africa Business Council. So first, we also call the CBC, The CBC was established in 2005, initiated by the Mr. Kofi Annan. It's to encourage Chinese private companies to invest in Africa and making investment in the manufacturing industry park and another industry sectors. Look back at the China poverty alleviation process, is especially in the west part of China. We can observe that one important significant achievement is attract the private sector to invest and build the factories in the region, which created many jobs for the local youth and women to work. So, with the aim of encourage and guide the Chinese private sector to invest in Africa, by the end of the 2021, the CBC has over 2,000 member companies, 80% from the Chinese private sector, and we have invested over the 16 billion US dollars in 45 Africa country and created 160,000 directly jobs. Influenced by the COVID-19 from the 2020, the CBC began to guide Chinese medical members to have business operations with the Africa, covering products such as the masks, nucleic acid detection kit, and the COVID-19 vaccine. CBC has also set up a medical committee in the coordination and the response to the needs from the Africa. Starting from the 2021, the CBC also set up a special committee for China-Africa Logistic Cooperation, which provides a platform to facilitate logistic cooperation between the China and Africa. In the August last year, 2021, CBC released the report on the Chinese enterprises invest in Africa. It is the first report using English and French as the main language and compiled by the Chinese NGO to introduce, summarize, and give an outlook on China-Africa business cooperation. In total, we have investigated more than 700 Chinese companies in Africa and found out that firstly, most of them expressed positive and optimistic on the investment in Africa. Secondly, Chinese companies are particularly awarded of the improvement of the business environment in African countries, such as the stability of the government policy and the openness of the taxi and the police department and the objectivity of the local medical and the local media. The third, Chinese company expressed that they have already noticed the problem caused by the different culture and language, and they are very willing to improve the cooperation culture with the local communities. On the other hand, Chinese company will continue to maintain the cooperation in the traditional area, such as the industry park and the manufacturing sector, and seek local partner in a new area of the cooperation in logistics and the e-commerce, and seek the cooperation with the local governments and join in the natural projects in areas such as science and technology, public health, and agri-processing. Finally, in the last year, China-Africa business. Finally, in this year, CBC will release report on China-Africa business cooperation under the perspective of supply chain. We pay particular attention to the impact on the supply chain security caused by the host issue like Russia-Ukraine conflict, international politics, and the region Africa emergency, and looking forward to see more and more connective and facilitate under the Africa Free Trade Area and the Africa regional organizations, especially on the new regulations on the tariff fees and the policy on cross-region travel. For example, whether there were a consistent healthcare standard under the Africa Free Trade Area, and whether there is a timetable to implement this standard. That's all. Thank you.
Many thanks for this very impressive review and report on the different type of investment and collaboration between indeed the different business partners in Africa and
Try this one.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope it's better. And just want to thank and indeed appreciate the elaboration on the different type of partnerships between the business sector and the different type of investments, as well as the reporting of it and the understanding of the massive amount of resources that can be invested and possibly can grow and be aligned with the SDGs. As we are moving from continent to continent, we continue this geographic shift. So we go back to the Horn of Africa and the Horn of Kenya. So we would like to hear at this point of time from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Ms. Asman, what are indeed the reflection from yourself and your association about the opportunities of this collaboration, and as well as how Kenyan businesses can learn and grow out of engaging in partnership with businesses in China, and particularly in the sector that can most benefit the SDGs, for example, in rural agriculture and in different type of sectors that can prove that people can get out of poverty. So Ms. Asman, I'm giving you the floor, and we look forward for your reflections and recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sakina Asman from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And I would like to take a great importance to this meeting, targeting the opportunities for transformative partnership between the Kenya and China. And I wish to thank the UN Kenya, the SDG Partnership Platform, and the Joint SDG Fund for the initiative to promote China-Africa partnership. When it comes to what China has done in eradicating poverty, I would say that this is very recommendable. And this is something that Kenya, not only Kenya, but as the whole of Africa as a whole, we should, it's like to mirror on what China has done so that Africa and Kenya in particular, we can copy and borrow some of the insights and what has been done by the China to eradicate on poverty. So even before COVID-19, we were not out of the poverty line as Africans. And when the COVID came now, there was a paradigm shift, and the following are affected in the implementation of the SDGs. Thus, one, how COVID affected us towards achieving the SDG, that the pandemic has exposed and intensified inequalities within and among countries, and years or even decades of progress has been halted or reversed towards achieving some of the sustainable development goals. Then the progress have also been halted and reversed, and investing, and we have learned that out of this pandemic, that towards eradicating poverty, some of the things that we are learning is that investing in data and information and infrastructure is very critical, and building back better requires multilateralism and the full participation of all societies, and transform changes are needed, and the SDG, this platform and the SDGs provide us with this roadmap. And so when it comes to poverty eradication, in most countries, poverty alleviation is an aid-based, especially in Kenya, and the approach that the African and Kenyans are using, we are seeing it as not really gearing towards what is needed or what we want to achieve. Then, but however, the China targeted poverty alleviation is more scientific approach because the government has identified the poor families and their needs and work in them to lift out poverty within the generation. So it is more an inclusive approach when it comes to poverty alleviation in China, so that this is what the Africa and Africa as a whole, and specifically Kenya, we should work towards the inclusive and scientific approach that China has done towards eradicating poverty. And when we here in Kenya, we have a bill that details the short and long-term policies to eradicate poverty and increase economic growth, that dictates that to eliminate poverty, citizens should have affordable standards of health. Then we have accessible and affordable adequate housing, accessible quality of life, quality food and safe water and employment opportunity, and establishment of poverty eradication fund. So China is nearly, if you take in account China is a home to nearly 1/5 of the world population. Its complete eradication of extreme poverty, the first target of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, is a milestone in the history of the Chinese nation and the history of humankind, making an important contribution to the cause of global poverty alleviation. China experience in poverty alleviation indicates that courage, vision, sense of responsibility, and the eagerness to take on challenges are the most essential. With strong will and determination, as well as practical action, we Kenyans, or the African as a whole, can make steady progress towards overcoming poverty and realizing common prosperity. So what in the private sector, as the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I think that what we can adopt, the lessons that we can adopt from what China has done, is that we have to utilize the targeted poverty alleviation strategy and improve the effectiveness of poverty reduction, and also solve the problem of who needs assistance. And we should not leave behind those vulnerable group of people like women and youth when it comes to poverty eradication, because when it comes to youth, they form a large percentage of the population, and most women works as much as possible. So when it comes to empowerment in the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the private sector side, we do have programs that works towards achieving this goal, the SDG goal number 1, that is no poverty. And we have programs that we work with not only as the private sector, but we'll also with the government of Kenya. And we have also signed MOU with the SDG Kenya Forum to just empower women economically when it comes to how they can sustain themselves, how they can empower themselves so that they can be able to stand alone and be able to achieve what they are supposed to achieve when it comes to pulling them out of poverty. Secondly, we must adhere to the government-oriented method, integrate poverty alleviation into the country's overall development strategy, and promote it at a strategic task, concentrate on large-scale special poverty alleviation actions, and implement specific development plans for women, children, people with disability, and ethnic minority. As the Chamber of Commerce, we do have a partnership with Amref Italia, and this is a program that help women in these areas, the northern part of Kenya. That is, we are working in Samburu, Turkana, Marsabit, and some part of Isiolo, just to empower these women, sometimes not in financial terms, because from the project we see that they have the ability to be empowered, but what they lack is the skill that they need to do whatever is needed. Now, when it comes to value addition in whatever they're doing, like when it comes to meat, when it comes to hide and skins, how do you use the resources that they have in their communities to make more progress economically and financially, so that even if you're dealing with hide and skins, these hide and skins, it's not only you can sell hide and skin, but you are also empowering them as a community and as women to know that from that hide and skin, you can have value addition on how you can make more from that hide and skin. We can make, leather bags, you can make belts, you can make whichever.
Thanks,
to empower them.
Thanks, Ms. Asman. Maybe if you want to conclude so that we allow all speakers take the floor. It's very interesting to hear concrete examples. Any further thoughts before we pass to the next speaker, and we will look forward also to hear questions from the audience. If you can conclude your remarks, that would be appreciated.
All right. I'll just conclude by saying that from our side, we will encourage the private sector with the government should come up with the real-time poverty alleviation policies and strive to reduce poverty through development of industry, labor migration, relocation, and minimum living standards guarantee scheme. Then the private sector should also ensure that the government increases fiscal spending and the financial support, strengthen land policy, mobilize private resource, and create a favorable environment. Then develop a rigorous monitoring and evaluation system and established an exit mechanism for poor countries like Kenya in some regions, and provide a roadmap for poverty reduction and scaling for mobilization of all resources to win the anti-poverty war. So in my conclusion, I'll say maybe time is not on my side, but I'll appreciate this platform and appreciate whatever the Chinese government is doing with the Kenya government. We can come together and do more, whether it's in projects or whether in any other sector that can continue to elevate the poverty. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's have a round of applause, and thanks for mentioning very concrete examples of what business can do to alleviate poverty and to, in this specific case, empower women. We have our last member of the panel to engage, and we want to give also colleagues online and in the audience the possibility to ask questions. So let me immediately turn the floor to Dr. Tian for sharing his reflection on.
So Max, just to say also that Judy joined online some time ago as well.
Okay, let's anyway move to Dr. Tian, and then we can hear from Judy later on. Thanks for joining. I think there were some problems today. We have the president here in the hotel, and we were blessed with that, but it has also added a few challenges in reaching the conference room. So Dr. Tian, if you can also keep in a very succinct way, we would really appreciate your consideration on how to invest in sustainable agriculture in Horn of Africa, and how this partnership with Chinese government and enterprises can help to reach the goals. So over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tian. I'm a program officer in FAO Kenya office. I do hear a little bit echo. I hope it's not from me, but you can hear me well, I hope. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I will just be very brief. So the bigger context is that there is a drastic population growth in all the African countries, including Kenya. So Kenya now we have 50 million people. And then by 2050, we will have 80 million people. So how do we feed this extra 30 million mouths with the same amount of land? So, sustainable intensification, that's something FAO has been promoting. And I think China has a lot of experience to share to Kenya and to other African countries to produce enough food for a big population. And this sustainable intensification is not only about technology transfer. Of course, it's very important, improve technology, climate resilient practices. These are very important technology transfer we need to do from China to African continent, but also, policy and institution, capacity building, policy improvement, implementation. These are all very important experience China can transfer or to share with the African continent. I just want to give a quick example. When FAO is implementing the conservation agriculture project, we've been trying to introduce agricultural mechanization in Kenya, and actually we see very successful results in the field. But we realized that it's not only about introducing a tractor to a village and then it will work. A lot of time, you have to deal with the maintenance, you have to deal with the whole business model. So I guess what I want to say is, when we are talking about intensification, we have to build, we have to introduce the whole package, from the technology to the supporting system, to the business model, and then to the investment mechanism. I think for that, China has a lot of experience to share with the African continent. The second point is digitalization. I'm from China, and we have a big population, 1.4 billion, if there's not more. And then they are a very robust digitalization system to keep all the farmers in records, their production level, poverty level, and Kenya have 50 million. Is there anything, experience we can share to build such system and also to maintain such system, and then to implement the policy or making policy based on such a data infrastructure, the good records of the farmers, where they are, what do they produce, what's the production level, what's the soil type. And this is what actually FAO is trying to build. We have two projects. One is the land registration project that is digitalizing all the land records, the tenure, to help the national government and also the county government to better manage their land registration. Another one is the Kenya Integrated Agriculture Management Information System that we are aiming to help the counties to register all the farmers and then to maintain this database, helping them to maintain a database to help them to make a good decision, for example, on agricultural subsidies. So this is a slow baby steps we have been helping the Kenyan government to take, but I'm sure China really have a lot of experience to share with the continent. The last one, I'm sorry I'm taking long, is facilitating structural trade of the agricultural commodities. Kenya is very blessed to be one of the best geographic location to produce a lot of commodities, tea, coffee, and many other, macadamia, many others. So how do we facilitate, structural trade, not only, selling one commodity from one continent to another, but more, building a sustainable trading pathway that, not only just one season, 2 seasons, but the very long run trade partnership between Kenya and China. I think that's another thing UN as a whole we can do, but also, working with the private sector, working with the government, that's something very important for us. Over to you, thank you.
I appreciate there is a vast amount of information. I would also encourage the speaker to share it maybe in the chat, the reference to the different programs that they mentioned, as well from what we heard from the from the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and the China-Africa Business Council. We'll make sure that those are also shared with our participants physically, but I appreciate the wealth of partnerships and engagement that is already happening. Before opening to the floor, I would kindly ask the organizer to share the link with the video. I'm afraid we are a bit delayed in terms of our time, so perhaps we can ask the colleagues to look at the video later in the day. So my last question for the panel before opening the floor is to the Executive Director of UN Global Compact, an ideal platform of connection between indeed the United Nations and its principles and private enterprises. So Judy, thanks for joining today. We really look forward to your reflections from the role of the UN Global Compact as a platform and a conveyor on how this partnership and collaboration can be brought to the next level. So over to you for your reflections. And as I said, we are a bit delayed on the schedule, so if you can please consider in the time that you're making your intervention. Thanks, and we would have loved to have you here, but I understand that you will not make it. Over it.
Yeah, thank you, moderator, and good morning, good afternoon, friends, from wherever you're tuning in. Thank you for the opportunity to join in this very important and promising conversation. And promising, I say, because Africa, we do share, a history and a vision for the common future with China. And just to open the discussion with some reflections, Africa is coming in from a point of strength, and this should be the launch pad, to really advance our collaborations. Africa, as we know it, is resource rich, youthful, geographically vast, politically diverse as a continent, with expanding economies and robust private sector and markets. However, we also know that we continue to face challenges as basic as food security, infrastructure reach, access to finance, informality, and global competition that's really leading to economic inequality and poverty. Of course, the pandemic and the climate crisis have not made anything better, and they do threaten to roll back the progress that we've already made. So to effectively address this and many other emerging challenges, we believe at the Global Compact that multi-sectoral partnerships guided by the UN values will be critical, especially in this decade of action. China and Africa, therefore, must collectively leverage strengths to unlock the continent's growth and build resilience going forward. The role of the private sector, with support from governments and the UN system, will be central in these efforts. Private sectors, we know, bring in unique capabilities. As drivers of innovation, job creation, and holders of capital, they are uniquely positioned to contribute to the realization of the SDGs and peaceful and just societies. The UN Global Compact plays a critical role as the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative and is a critical partner in this collaboration. In this final lap to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals, we, the UN Global Compact, have an ambition to accelerate and scale the global collective impact of all our businesses by upholding the 10 principles and truly delivering on the SDGs through accountable companies and ecosystems that we think can enable the change that we seek. At the core of our mandate as a UN Global Compact, we apply a principles-based approach to business and investments. We ensure market players have an obligation to act with utmost values and integrity wherever they have presence, knowing that good practices in one area do not offset harm in another. And I think it's critical to acknowledge that, yes, Africa is seen as a frontier for growth, and we have been registering economic growth before the pandemic. But we also do know that this growth has not been inclusive, it has not been sustainable. And so it's important that we take this opportunity in time to course correct to ensure that we are actually putting in efforts towards development that will deliver growth-based, sustainable and inclusive outcomes for all. As economies on the continent and indeed the Horn of Africa, as we recover from the pandemic, we see critical opportunities in key sectors such as energy transitions, transforming our food systems, leveraging the wealth of extractive industries towards a green, sustainable, and inclusive economy, ensuring that no one is left behind. And we see two critical conditions that must be met to build these new markets. Number one, and this really has been the thrust of the conversations over the last 2 days, innovative financing from both the public and the private sectors will be needed to unlock the trillions required annually to achieve the SDGs in the continent. And we are glad that these conversations have been robust over the last 2 days, and we can see a number of these innovative financing solutions coming forward. At the same time, we can't fail to acknowledge that we need a new social contract between business, government, and society, which will really be essential in defining the role of business in a new, fairer economy. Tapping into these opportunities will also require a departure from a business as usual approach to transforming our economic models to deliver broad-based, inclusive, and sustainable growth, not just for people, but also for planet. So the strength of the UN Global Compact lies in building the capacity of businesses to be responsible actors in their pursuit of commercial interests, challenging them to elevate levels of their ambition and brokering partnerships to advance impact in key areas. Secondly, our convening role and multi-stakeholder platform allows us to improve consultation and conduct policy dialogues in PPP projects to address key concerns and enhance transparency and sustainability of a number of these projects. Third, but not least, we leverage global expertise to develop guidance and best practices that we think can be replicated to maximize the impact to accelerate the SDGs. The market opportunities to deliver on the goals are vast, estimated at $12 trillion a year, and there exist compelling reasons for business to take action from consumers, from employees, regulators, as well as investors. And together with the UN, we believe we can work collaboratively to redirect private sector investments into the Horn of Africa, devise strategies that will help leapfrog Africa's development in key priority areas, guided by tried and tested models, as we can see in China. And so this is a partnership that we should be able to really guard jealously to be able to deliver the outcomes that we seek for the African continent. We do not need to take the decades that China took, to really turn back the hands of poverty for our people. We have a blueprint upon which we can build, and we have, expertise and goodwill from the government and the people of China to really deliver on this agenda. And so as a global compact, we are your partners in bringing the voice and the role of the private sector and the responsible business community to bring the full weight to channel this development. Thank you.
Stewardship of the Global Compact in bringing private leaders to the real frontier of inclusive businesses. So let's also have an applause for Judy. I would want to have, we are late, and I know there has been a bit of repeating trends in those 2 days, but I just want to give one option for the many panelists and, for the many people that are in the audience here and online to ask questions. We will have one opportunity to ask questions to the panel and our young Western coordinator in China and Kenya. And I would, after that, I would have a very last round to our panelists and perhaps asking them to be in a succinct way to maybe indicate a couple of practical way forward to interview to make this partnership even stronger and more impactful. I don't see any hand from the audience.
I think Sid wanted to say something. I can see his hand up. Maybe we pass it to.
If you don't mind, let's see if there are any questions. Otherwise, we'll indeed start with Sid and Stephen for some concluding remarks. If I don't see any hands raised, either in the audience or in online virtual participation, then oh, sorry, please, Father, please.
Just one quick question. Thank you. First of all, just quickly, I think the relationship between Africa and China dated back in the 14th century when Ibn Battuta visited China, and also somebody from Mogadishu visited also. So, and then also China was very supportive to the liberation movement in Africa. So there is, I would say, a moral or historical or social grounds before having really this economic ground. The second, I think I just want to hear from them how the 9 programs that the FOCAC 2021 in Dakar has elaborated on. I haven't heard about important aspect that was mentioned. The declaration highlighted 9 programs. Some of them have already been explained by both Stephen and Sid. But for example, I see that the aspect of digital economy, they added cybersecurity because they will go hand in hand. Second, the declaration also put focus on youth and women. How do also will be supported then. And food security and safety. And I want to hear, I will end with that, how the global economic policy now, or political economy, between Russia and Ukraine crisis could be both an opportunity or a threat to such investment relation. Thank you.
Thanks for the question about the history and the future. I don't see any other hands raised, so I ask perhaps Sid and Stephen to provide any concluding remarks and thoughts first, and then I will pass the floor to also our distinguished panelists, thanking them already for their contribution and sharing your knowledge. Sid, over to you, and thanks for your patience. Please take the floor.
Thank you. So, there are a few deficits we are confronted with in Africa. One is a health deficit, there is a food deficit, there is a digital deficit, a green deficit, and an infrastructure deficit. Where I see the real promise is by 2030, agribusiness in Africa will be $1 trillion worth. That's just 8 years away. If you look at the healthcare business, that's about $400 to $500 billion. We've done this calculation in Kenya. If you look at the green deficit, if you look at the infrastructure deficit, these are things which are massive opportunities. And this is where the UN can play a very important role in harnessing blended financing. So to me, for China, Africa is the new market of producers because Africa's population will be 2.5 billion by 2050. That is precisely the market that will for the rest of the world. So it is how we can galvanize investments from all sides to make that happen. So I see great promise in this kind of a dialogue that is taking place. And we will also share with you an outcome document which has just come out of a discussion that has taken place here in China between the African countries and the UN. And we've come up with an outcome document on operationalizing the FOCAC, which is now being finalized, and we've sent that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. Stephen, do you want to have some?
Yeah, let me just do it from here very rapidly. Excellent contributions from all the panelists. The one thing that I really take away from this is that China achieved scale. And that's what we need most. Whether we go back to the comment that was made about Kenya almost doubling her population by 2050, going from 50 million to 80 million, so 60% increase. Or we just look at the fact that there are only 8 years left to achieve the SDGs. We're confronted with that urgency. China, in lifting 800 million people out of poverty, I mean, that's close to the entire population in 4 decades. There's so much that we can learn here about scale. We are still, and I speak for the United Nations at least, we're still trapped in pilotitis. We're always trying experiments. We're always trying new initiatives. We don't have the time to experiment with pilots. No more pilots, we need jet planes. And I think that that is something, as we've heard today, that we can really take from the Chinese example, how to move with rapidity and purpose, with clarity of vision, and to do so in a way that leaves no one behind. Easy to say, harder to deliver on, but I think what we've heard from the panelists this morning is that there are key sectors, water, infrastructure, energy, the green transition, agriculture and food nutrition, and food security and nutrition, where we can really learn from how that scale was engendered in a practical way. So I think flowing from today, we need follow-on conversations that really do deep dives into how we achieve scale across those key sectors, at least for Kenya and for the rest of the continent as well. Thank you so much. Asante sana.
Thank you, Stephen and Sid. I will just give the opportunity also to the other panelists to, at this point, to take the floor and add any final consideration and final points to move the partnership forward. If I'm calling them, and please feel free to either add or thank the audience, and thanking again for your participation. Mr. Xiaofeng, would you like to share some final considerations with the audience?
Thank you. I just heard that's the Kenya people ask the NIE project. Yeah. I can how to say share some the opinion, and right now the CBC maybe we take on the two is one is to promote the investment, and another is to promote the trade. How to say the most important job this year, maybe the next 3 or 5 years, we will set up the private sector fund. Yeah, to support the small and middle-sized China-Africa cooperation project. From my experience, right now, a lot of the like the middle and small and middle-sized project is very difficult to get the fund from the third side. So the CBC we will set up one that's fund. Second, we will set up the industrial park in China or in the North Africa. That's why we want to how to say attract a lot of the Chinese manufacturer factory invest in that area. From our CBC, our member focus on the manufacture and the industry. That's my how to say the experience. Yeah.
Thank you, and I will give also the last possibility to speak to Ms. Asman as a concluding remarks for today from Kenya. I don't know, Ms. Asman, if you would like to share briefly some conclusions or way forward, and after you, we will close the session, please.
Okay, thank you so much. What on my side I'll say is that poverty eradication does not involve the government alone, and it cannot be left to the government alone. And this private sector and the government must, and I insist on the word must, come together as one to come up with ways and policies that really look into poverty eradication. So we all have to come, private sector and the government have to mobilize all resources for poverty reduction, including both the public and private sectors, especially favorable policies, not just policies, but favorable, that can make the environment conducive to both the small and medium enterprises, women and youth in the fight of this road to the SDG #1, no poverty in the end of 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. We heard today a lot about innovation, scale, sectors from agriculture, women empowerment, digitalization. We heard about many partnerships, the the table is actually full of opportunities. So we hope that this is not the beginning, but is another step in the process of strengthening this potential partnership. Particularly useful also to hear in a summit about mobilizations and using private finance to reach the SDGs, also the opportunity to use blended finance and innovative finance vehicles. So I would not attempt to summarize. It was very rich discussion. Maybe the organizer also would want to share with the partners many links and many information that were referred during this panel. So a last round of applause to our distinguished panelists. Thanking them also. Joining from, I guess, a bit later in the evening from China. So this session is concluded. So thanks everyone for joining us today. Since have already the mic, just a few announcements as we move to the next session. Unfortunately, Vicky cannot be with us today, so I will not offer you any energizer, but we have the coffee there. So we have the coffee there, so it's also a very practical way if at any point you feel a bit weaker. Today is an internal discussion among the UN. Among us, we have heard a lot in the past 2 days about private sector, about our partners in development finance institutions. Today is really to reflect how the UN can respond to that, can change, can become more adaptive and then more able to take advantage of these new opportunities. We have particularly 4 sessions, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. We start going a bit deeper into some experiences from our friends. You have seen the logo through the event. So to describe the experience on the SDG Partnership platform. Then we will have our colleagues from UNCDF and UNDP getting a bit deeper into innovative tools and the innovative finance tools that the UN has been implementing and have the opportunities to scale. While in the afternoon, we'll have Jennifer Topping and our colleagues from the MTFO to describe a bit the opportunities to use those trust funds as a vehicle to mobilize resources. And finally, we'll have an open session for us to reflect on what has happened in those 2 days, where we're really looking forward to your contributions. So without further ado, I will pass the floor to Arif, I assume, and to lead us to our next session, and with the plea of everyone to really try to stay on time. And I'm not sure I did the best job on that, but at least I can tell people to do that. So thanks everyone. Thanks again, Stephen, for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Max, for doing a stellar job of moderating this event. Appreciation to you for rising up to the occasion. Colleagues, without further ado, as we're running about 15 minutes over time, we would like to commence with the next session. I think I've met most of you. Arif Neky, Senior Advisor, UN Strategic Partnerships at the Resident Coordinator's Office. Glad to see Stephen back, alive and kicking from New York last night. What I'd like to do is be your moderator today and invite some of my panelists. It's not a panel discussion as such, but we've been asked quite a few times by quite a few countries on, what is this SDG Partnership Platform model? We've got Tunisia, Algeria, Angola. A number of countries have expressed interest, South Africa, Uganda. So what we thought was we'll mount a short session on the genesis and the work streams that the platform has been pursuing over the last few years, and what some of our reflections and learnings have been so far, and what we think might be future opportunities. So rather than speak about that and kind of blow our trumpet ourselves as founding coordinator or resident coordinator, we'd rather our partners and colleagues who've been involved in these work streams actually give you a flavor of what they think was useful and how they felt the platform added value to the work that the UN is doing in Kenya and could potentially replicate in other countries. So without further ado, I'd like to invite some of our panelists. Dr. Stephen Jackson is here right before you. I'd like to invite Medine, who is the head of UNAIDS Kenya. She's also the coordinator of the H6 agencies, and she's the co-chair of our primary healthcare window. And I'll explain the Windows architecture to you shortly. Welcome, Medine. But also, we have Dr. Waiguru from the Ministry of Health. representing the Deputy Minister for Health in Kenya, who will be joining us online. So hopefully, colleagues, you can see if Dr. Waiguru is connected. We have Dr. Edin Saruk also, who is connecting with us online. We have the Deputy Head of UNIDO Kenya, Lynette Luai, who's been a very active member of the platform, and thanks for being such a champion, Lynette. We welcome you to come over. We've also got Ron Ajengo from IFAD, who unfortunately is on the field, but we'll see if connectivity allows him to also present a very interesting initiative that's happening on deepening financing for smallholder farmers and de-risking. I'd like to invite head of UNFPA, our new incoming head, Anders. Welcome, Anders. Love to have you here. And we've also got a very important partner with whom we have a strategic partnership on scaling up primary healthcare innovations, Millicent from Farm Access. Farm Access has been a very good, strong partner with us, and in fact has seconded for 2 years pro bono a full-time resource to us, Irene Karanja, who coordinates our primary healthcare window. We've also got Dr. Alfred Demo, who will join us and speak about FintNet, the Finance, Trade and Investment Network. So I'll be calling on Alfred and Nelly Muriuki, who are both going to speak to us towards the end. We'll call upon you to come and join us shortly. Without further ado, what I'd like to do is invite Medine to say a few words from her perspective about the Kenya SDG Partnership Platform model, just to essentially open up or frame the session. We'll then ask the Ministry of Health for their perspective as well at a higher level. We'll then just run a series of presentations guided by slides. We're trying to run through those fairly quickly to give you a sense of the diverse work streams that the platform has been working with and how it all ties together in terms of some of the achievements, challenges, and future opportunities that we found. We'd like to spend some time and open it up so that we can have kind of a UN family discussion with you and also learn from some of your experiences, because a wise old man, as I said yesterday, told us that the greatest room in the world is the room for improvement. So we want to constantly refine and reiterate kind of some of the work that we're trying to do. So without further ado, Medine, can I invite you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Arif. Good morning once again. So let me just share maybe genesis of the SDG Partnership Platform and focusing on the primary healthcare window. So in Kenya, the President, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, launched what you call the Big Four agenda. And what are these Big Four agenda? One is the universal health coverage. Then the food security. Third one is decent housing and manufacturing. So within the UN, in order to support the Big Four agenda, we had also a mirror structure of these 4 windows under the SDG Partnership Platform. So the primary healthcare window is basically aims at promoting or facilitating investment at primary healthcare level, because in Kenya, health is one of the functions that is devolved to a county level. Because in Kenya, we have a devolved structure with 47 counties. So counties are responsible on healthcare delivery for people in counties, basically. So this primary healthcare window has been one of the 4 windows that became operational right after the launch in 2017 at the General Assembly. And when it comes to the governance structure, we have the Ministry of Health at national level and the county governance, because even the county, they have a council of governance where they organize themselves according to the sector. So the chair of the health committee within the council of governance is now the co-chair, and from the UN side, at higher level, we have the resident coordinator, leading in the steering committee, but at the windows level, respective heads of agencies are co-chairing with the Ministry of Health and with the Council of Governance. So myself as the coordinator of the H6, I'm sure all of us are familiar with the H6 partnership, WHO, UNFPA, UNICEF, UN Women, UNAIDS, and World Bank. So we are basically contributing to the universal healthcare agenda. So what do we do in this window, the primary healthcare window? Again, the objective is really to convene, catalyze investment in the primary healthcare level to invest in promotive, preventive healthcare. That is now the backbone of the universal health coverage, again, that has been launched by His Excellency, the President, across the counties. So we have quite a number of stakeholders, primarily from private sector, foundations, the UN, donors, NGOs, that have really, a role to play in this space. And so far, we have at least supported the development of the public-private, collaboration strategy, because that is one key element to really build the trust and having an enabling environment for the private sector now to come in and invest, in primary health care. So far we have been able to identify about 200 million, pipeline investment, that can go into the primary health care space. And also the other one is the one that we launched yesterday. As you have seen, the development impact bond on adolescent sexual reproductive health, and many others, even ECD. So it's really bringing the partnership, the collaboration, creating the enabling environment so that the private sector has also confidence and minimizing the risk when they go into investing, whether it's in diagnosis or infrastructure, expansion. So we have really an encouraging results and partnership that we have seen that will be able now to expand into the other windows, like the food and security, in manufacturing, and the low-cost housing. So I think that it just is an introduction, and now coming into the implementation of our new cooperation framework, this will be now the springboard to really bring more partnership, pooling the funds in order for us to deliver on what we have prioritized in our cooperation framework. So let me stop here, Arif. I'm sure even other colleagues will come in with more specifics.
Thank you very much, Medine, and colleagues, please applaud her, not just for her remarks, but also for a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes. She works very closely with us on the MPTF, on a number of government and other engagements. Now it's my great pleasure to officially invite the UN Resident Coordinator Kenya to, if he's not too jet-lagged, to kindly indulge us with his comments. And as he came into Kenya and he heard this work that was going on around the SDG Partnership platform, it was interesting to sort of understand what his initial and his, I guess, evolving reactions have been around this new innovation. Over to you, Steve.
Well, thank you so much. And I will try my best to be brief, in part in function of my jet lag, but also because this really needs to be about you, the audience, because the idea of this session is really to provide the UN family with an opportunity to interact on interacting with the private sector. If I'm jet lagged, we'll find out if it's too early in the morning for you. A little bit of maths to begin with. So I arrived in Kenya last year to take up post and was really encouraged to find a country team that was throughputing somewhere between 350 and 450 million US dollars per annum in total program. And coming in from a much smaller program in Gabon, that was really exciting. But then I did the maths. The public purse in Kenya is about $30 billion per annum. So that's 100 times bigger than the UN is doing. The private sector is 3 times bigger again. It's about 90 billion US dollars per annum. Now ask yourself this simple question. If you have to get to the SDGs by 2030, in a country like Kenya? Are you going to be able to do it with the $350 million per annum that the UN mobilizes? Absolutely not. Can't be done. You won't get anywhere close. Can you do it with the public purse of Kenya? Well, maybe, but fiscal space is extremely constrained. So of that 30 billion that is mobilized through the national budget every year, fully 1/3 of that is going to debt service right now. So your only chance to hit the SDGs by 2030 is if you can dip into that much bigger pot, the $90 billion that the Kenyan private sector throughputs every year. How do you do that? Well, you do it through something we think like the SDG Partnership Platform that I was privileged to inherit through the terrific work of Sid, who was just on the line with us, this amazing country team that we have, Edin's leadership on health, the many other colleagues leading on the different windows that we have. But we had a number of hurdles to get over, and it'd be interesting to discuss some of those with you today, because there's been very strong interest in how we've done it, but we also want to learn from you, because many of you are doing it in your countries as well. Here, amongst the hurdles, first of all, I think as a country team, we imagined that just as ODA was declining, the private sector might be an amazing new source of funding for us, for the UN, that somehow the private sector was going to flow its money through us. So that was the first learning that we had to do as a country team, is to say, no, that's not how this is going to work. You may be able to tap into small bits of private sector funding from CSR, but what this really is about trying to redirect private sector investment towards the SDGs. So having influence on the direction of a much larger flow of financing for development, but without it necessarily passing through the United Nations coffers. Second, we really had to learn private sector lingo. We've been very lucky to be able to attract amazing colleagues like Arif, who seem to be able to speak all of the different languages fluently. So finding somebody who knows how to talk deal flow and de-risking and the kinds of language that the private sector speaks, and to translate from our own language around the SDGs and leave no one behind. So finding that interface is really critically important. And then moving from there to really 4 main areas of what it is that we do. The first is in creating networks. So bringing, and I think you'll hear a lot more about this morning, the agriculture sector network that brings together all of the leading agriculture and agribusiness actors in the country for convened conversations about how to engage. The second is in market opportunity identification. So this is where you go in, as the platform did just a couple of years ago, and you find somebody that's prepared to put a bit of money on the table to do a study on the market opportunity in the provision of primary health care in Kenya. So we had USAID, McKinsey, and UN Kenya working together, who come up with a study that says, guess what? There's $6 billion to be made per annum in the provision of primary health care. So not through high-tech hospitals, but through clinics in the most far-flung parts of the country. And you can imagine the galvanizing effect that that $6 billion opportunity has for private sector actors who then flow in, and then we're going to be hearing from some of those. So the second area is this market opportunity identification. The third, of course, is crowding in technical advice and support from the deep bench of expertise that we have in UN Kenya and beyond in the UN family. Sectoral expertise about how to engage and how to take an investment opportunity and orient it towards the accomplishment of the SDGs. And that also involves technical expertise around innovative financing. So blended financing,
of the kind, or the development impact bond that we launched so amazingly yesterday, that's crowding in both public and private sector financing to a quite sensitive area on adolescent sexual and reproductive health. And so then finally is helping to give birth to public-private partnerships in specific endeavors. So actually, we're sitting here in Safari Park. We're in conversation with the big business behind Safari Park to look at the area of agribusiness and how we might come together, public and private, to really boost Kenyan agribusiness. It's also about helping the Kenyan government to get the enabling environment right for public-private partnerships. Everything from the policy regime to the taxation regime to the legal regime that governs them. So it's working in all of those different ways under this flag and this flagship of the SDG Partnership Platform. We're really proud of it. It's an amazing team that we have within UN Kenya working on this, and I'm proud to say within the RCO on behalf of the full UN Kenya team. And maybe I'll just finish there, Arif, if I may. One other challenge that I think to my brother resident coordinators who are in the audience, something that we've really had to work on here is to say, how can the RCO support this initiative to support the country team? And we've really worked very hard to engender that understanding and say this is something that can be driven from the RCO, but on behalf of and in support of all of your efforts. And so then having people like Medhin, like Lynette and our UNIDO colleagues leading on the different windows and RCO providing support to them, I think is a really key lesson learned. So we're really excited about it, but just to conclude, we're very conscious that we are not the only people on the planet or on the continent working in this area. So really very keen also to learn from the RCs and from the country team colleagues, the RCO colleagues in the audience from other countries as to how you've done it, because it does seem to me that scale challenge that I described for Kenya is the one that we're all facing. We're all facing declining ODA, even as we recognize that 2030 is coming closer and closer. And we all know that even in the good old days, ODA was never going to be enough to get any country to the SDGs. So how also have you found ways to unlock and work with the private sector? I'm really looking forward to learning from all of you. Asante sana.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I'd like to check if the Ministry of Health is with us online. Dr. Estella Waiguru, representing the Deputy Minister for Health.
Yes, thank you so much, Arif.
Thank you, Dr. Waiguru. At this point, we just wanted you to, just very briefly make one or two opening remarks, and then we'll come back to you specifically on the subject we discussed yesterday around the development impact bond with our colleague from UNFPA. But perhaps you'd just like to make an opening remark at this stage across the entire ambit of the platform. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Can I request for 1 minute to be able to get my remarks together before I speak?
Sure, that's fine. So maybe we'll come back to you more specifically on the subject of adolescent sexual reproductive health that you are leading on at the ministry. Meanwhile, what I'd like to do is request that the presentation be uploaded. Mike, could we get the presentation? That's great, thanks. Mike, bear with me because I'm going to whiz through many of these slides really quickly. So whoever is controlling the slides, we will go fairly quickly. So let's move on to the next slide, please. So just some information. The partnership platform I see as having sort of three reincarnations. I came from private sector, Societe Generale for this region. Came from Philanthropy, Aga Khan Foundation. And I joined the UN because the UN was about to commence with an interesting new approach as the SDGs were adopted, which was called the SDG Philanthropy platform. And this was an idea supported by champions in Silicon Valley and the West Coast, which were really Hilton Foundation, Ford Foundation, and MasterCard. And the idea was, how do we bridge the gap in the SDG financing that the Addis conference had identified, as you know. The second incarnation was after about 4 years of having run the initial global pilot in Kenya and scaled up in 8 other countries, we realized that philanthropy capital is agile, it's innovative, it's risk tolerant, it's nimble, but it's not adequate. We need to really go after private capital to address this issue that Dr. Jackson spoke about, which is declining public financing and really a constrained fiscal space with debt relief and recurrent salaries and the like. So we moved in the second incarnation from the SDG Philanthropy platform to the SDG Partnership platform. And now we could go after private capital in addition to philanthropy capital and other types of capital. This was launched next slide, please. This was launched in September 2017 by the Kenya government in a speech at the UN General Assembly. And what was interesting in this was that, it was preceded by what I call the dog and pony show. We did 3 World Economic Forum events, Durban, Davos, and Kigali. We had 3 UN General Assembly side events jointly with the government of Kenya to essentially moot this notion of a public-private partnership platform. And it got to the point where the government was excited and fired up enough and owned the idea enough to actually launch it themselves in the Kenya speech. And the comment they made was that you get these declarations of partnerships at every conference and everyone talks about SDG 17, et cetera, but what's that ecosystem on the ground that can bring a UN agency, a private sector investor, bring in a technical partner, bring in a blended finance partner, bring in local governments, and actually hatch very concrete financing and investment pipelines. And that ecosystem was really missing. And that was the idea around the genesis of this platform in Kenya. Straight after lunch, we walked over because essentially it was a mandate now to start constructing this platform. And we signed on Philips from the Netherlands, the Netherlands government, a number of other private sector partners came on board, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Merck for Mothers, Huawei, Safaricom, etc. But also other bilaterals like the US government, Switzerland, Sweden, etc. So that gave us a critical mass of multi-stakeholder partners, and of course, not forgetting my dear old sector, which is the philanthropy sector, where we had many years ago launched the East Africa Philanthropy Network with 300 foundations in East Africa. So we have the Hilton Foundation, which is tripled its endowment now, Rockefeller Foundation, we've got Ford Foundation. So a number of these large foundations are also part of this mix. Moving on fairly quickly. Next slide, please. We fashioned ourselves across a priority agenda that President Kenyatta announced in his last term of office for 5 years, which was what we call the Big Four agenda. So it was really around universal health care, but we focused on primary health care for obvious reasons. As an emerging middle-income country, we needed to focus on preventive, promotive health at the ground level rather than secondary and tertiary health care. It's not about the PET scans and CAT scans, it's about early detection. It's about keeping costs down as well. Food and nutrition security, manufacturing, and affordable housing. And as we did this, we created a multi-partner trust fund with the Jennifer Topping's office in New York and fashioned these 3 windows within that multi-partner trust fund, each with its own steering committee, co-chaired by the minister for that sector. So it's Minister for Health or Minister for Agriculture, or, respectively. The 47 governments we have at subnational level also have what they call a Council of Governors. So the chairman of the health sector of the Council of Governors, representing 47 counties, becomes the next co-chair. And the third co-chair is the UN. So in this case, it would be Edin as the H6 coordinator. Food and Nutrition Security, same model, steering committee, but in this case, it was interesting, we got all the ROM-based agencies. So IFAD, FAO, and World Food Programme took rotating chairmanship. And we also brought in very strongly UNIDO because of the link between manufacturing and agro-food processing. Can we move on, please? Next slide. What we do is the 30-second elevator speech is we convene, connect, catalyze SDG partnerships, financing, and investments. That's it. That's a clear focus. And our role is really to leverage the convening power of the UN. As the RC said, it's really about being a magnet to influence private sector flows, not necessarily coming through the UN, but in the grand scheme of things, creating that national impact. Can we move on? So some of our work streams, as Dr. Jackson mentioned, are around market intelligence and development, convening and catalyzing concrete partnerships. That's Dr. James Wangi, who you saw at the opening and who was a very inspirational keynote. I heard from many of you that you enjoyed his speech. He's got $6 billion sitting on his books, looking for some level of soft financing. Stimulating investments and financing, so concrete investment pipelines, going from the conceptual to really concrete investment pipelines that Edin talked about, $200 million in primary healthcare, etc., and innovative financing. And that's an example we'll speak about. So just to give you a deeper insight into these work streams, I'd like to invite maybe I'll start with Dr. Edin Saruk, if he's with us. Can we check if Dr. Saruk is online?
Yes, good morning, Arif. I'm with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So Dr. Saruk has been an amazing partner. He's our advisor, senior advisor for technology and innovation, and he's supported through the Philips Foundation. He's currently based in the Netherlands, has been with us on and off for 3 years. Completely pro bono, so that's another contribution. So Edin, if you just want to say a few quick words around primary healthcare innovations and financing, and then we'll move on to Millicent to speak about Marwa. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Arif, and good morning, colleagues, and greetings from this side of the world. Just indeed few words on actually what we have been indeed doing from the onset of the SDG partnership platform without repetition of the many important things that have been mentioned already. So actually from the onset, so we have been indeed working closely with all our partners to identify market opportunities and of course barriers to unlock them. And to unlock private, philanthropic and public means, exactly as the RC also mentioned, and combining both financial and intellectual capital to support the Kenya's development agenda. And of course, the priorities have been indeed clear also from the onset and from the launch of the SDG partnership platform Kenya. And together with McKinsey, indeed, we have been able to landscape and map out the investment opportunities in primary care, and the RC mentioned also the $6 billion opportunity. And there is a next slide, please. At least I see I'm looking into a slide. Yes, please, thank you. So where we identified, let's say, an overall, you can say, investment opportunity size of $6 billion. And the $6 billion is actually what we are speaking about is till 2028. We need to realize that actually the market is growing, that also actually the challenges that we have faced also during COVID actually even increased other type of opportunities, or actually brought new opportunities in the digital space as well. And it is very important indeed to leverage and to support that specific need as well. And the two highest, I mean, if you look at this slide specifically, the two highest, let's say, return submarkets are diagnostics and medical education. And if we look into those, these are really very important, of course, for the market. And if we look to the $6 billion that I mentioned, of course, $4 billion is new opportunities, new deals, and new engagements that need to be indeed implemented. And while, let's say, 1/3, $2 billion will be kind of replacement of existing assets. So it's good to put it in that perspective. And the two largest sub-markets are indeed risk pooling, of course, and outpatient and maternal care, which I would say are the building blocks of the primary care, of course, as Medine has been indeed explaining. So what is really happening in the healthcare window? And during this exercise, already 2 transactions have been supported by the platform and the partners. And also in that specific exercise, 10 big IDs have been actually identified, and they are now what you can see on the screen. And they're mainly meant actually to unlock this private capital and investments, and also intellectual capital, actually also to unlock the potential behind these big ideas, actually, that have been indeed clustered in 2 categories. So actually, where from one hand, let's say the enablers, and that's where you see the role of the technology and innovation, and the other second part, which is more actually the cross-cutting, and then it is actually more the innovative models that brings actually public and private together, and of course address also the barriers around public-private collaboration, addressing innovative business models and innovative financing. And I think that is very, very important, of course, to see on how we are actually making the steps in the healthcare window at the moment, and some of us could witness actually the big moment also yesterday by the announcement of the world's first adolescent and sexual reproductive health development impact bond in Kenya, and we are really looking forward that this is a milestone, and this is a first in kind and not the last in kind, and there are many of those opportunities, of course, in this space that we are in process of unlocking. And I think we gained that momentum, and this is the momentum indeed to keep building. I think a strong foundation indeed has been built. And if we look indeed to the innovation space and the technology as well, so then I can also open the floor for Millicent, my dear colleague, and is that actually that we have been in the last also years together with many colleagues from the different agencies to twin the Silicon Valley and the Silicon Savannah, actually, with also the intellectual capital and the many ideas that we already have on the ground, and the knowledge and the capacity from the Silicon Valley and other regions actually to unlock and translate and convert these ideas actually bankable and transactional, let's say, partnerships that can support Kenya in its development. Thank you, Arif. I hope I didn't eat up too much time.
Thank you, Edin. No, that was excellent. I hope people could hear you. So we did go with the Minister for ICT, Julian Cheru, our youngest minister and head of Google Africa for 9 years before he was appointed, to Silicon Valley, and I think Sid alluded to that too. So lots of interesting discussions about linking the Silicon Savannah and the Silicon Valley, and how do you unlock private sector flows, etc. I'm going to ask Millicent to very briefly give us a flavor of one example of innovative financing that we've also been working on with Farm Access.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arif. I'm going to share about Marwa. And Marwa is a Kisumu health insurance scheme, solidarity scheme. Actually, Marwa means ours. That is in the Luo language. And the reason why the Kisumu County residents own it, it's because of sustainability and ensuring their skin is in the game. And just to build up from where Edin has shared, it actually focuses on primary health care. And the key focus of Marwa is to look at healthcare from both the demand side and from the supply side. And this is through a digitally enabled ecosystem. And one of the key things that Marwa does is, as Farm Access and together with SDG, we offer technical assistance and technical support. 2 key roles that I want us to know of is the role of enabling and the role of aggregating. It is actually able to aggregate the funds. On one hand, we're able to aggregate and collect funds, as well as ensure that these funds can be able to support the payment of NHIF super cover. So we act as a contractor for NHIF, for the citizens of Kisumu. Another thing we do from the patient perspective is to be able to ensure that the funds are ring-fenced. The funds that we collect from the private sector, other foundations like John Martin Foundations and other investment funds are ring-fenced, such that these funds are actually used for healthcare and nothing else. What is the importance of this data collection? One of the key things that we are doing is ensuring there is transparency, we are ensuring there is efficiency, and we are ensuring that the care is actually patient-centric. And on the other side, in terms of the supply side, we are actually able to work with the provider to improve their quality, so that when the patients go to the facility, they're actually able to get quality services. So besides improving the quality of care, we are also able to ensure that this is heavily data-driven. They actually get dashboards for decision-making. That is for the policymakers, for the providers, and for everyone within their facility. And this is an example of a scheme that ensures that we leave no one behind, that the indigent can be able to get someone to pay for them the scheme, the insurance, and the county is actually able to pay for this. So one of the things we have done is we started initially with 42,000 households, which is around 150,000 lives, and the county is going to top up and also pay for the rest of the indigent, whereby we also have the people who can pay for healthcare pay for themselves, the people who are in formal insurance pay for it, and the key goal of this scheme is to ensure we achieve universal healthcare, which is one of the big pillars. And that is the journey that we have walked together from 2018 to date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I may apologize to my panelists because there's such rich information on each of these initiatives that we could spend an hour on each one. But it's been fantastic. Millicent on behalf of Farm Access and Irene on behalf of the SDG platform co-hosted an PHC Innovation Conference just literally 2.5 weeks ago with I think close to 100 participants. And the government represented by the governor of Kisumu, who chairs the health committee for all the 47 counties, has very strongly endorsed this initiative, and this initiative is actually working in complementarity with the National Health Insurance Scheme. So when she talks about NHIF, it's the National Health Insurance Scheme. So these are really interesting public-private partnerships around risk pooling. I'd like to move on in the interest of time to talking about curating some concrete investment pipelines through the platform. So besides the upstream work on policy, the engagements with government on risk pooling, and unlocking and financial capital, there's also this opportunity to create concrete investments on the ground, facilitate them, support them. Of course, we don't take equity or financing positions as UN. I think the only agency I know that has a little more savvy and mandate to do that would be UNCDF, but the rest of us keep an arm's length distance, but we facilitate, and we don't claim attribution, we only claim some contribution. I'd like to invite Lynette Luai from UNIDO to just give you a flavor of another sector, the food and nutrition sector, where we've also worked very closely in a presidential initiative, which is got some amazing, large, transformative projects that are coming through.
Yeah, thank you, Arif, and good morning, colleagues. My name is Lynette Luai. I work at UNIDO as the deputy representative. And just to build on what Arif has said, we have been collaborating very closely with the SDGPP in terms of curating investment pipelines. I will provide a case study of the Nyamira Integrated Agro-Industrial Park, which was launched in 2021 as an anchor project of our 5-year programmatic framework in support of the Government of Kenya Industrialization Agenda that we call the Program for Country Partnership. So the Integrated Agro-Industrial Park supports inclusive structural transformation through agro-industrialization. It very much aligns to national development priorities, looking at our Vision 2030, our medium-term plan 3, and currently, as Kenya, we are developing the medium-term plan 4, and we are heavily engaged in that process to make sure that the elements of the Program for Country Partnership and the Nyamira Integrated Park are anchored within the medium-term plan 4, because ultimately, government of Kenya will be requested to provide funding towards implementation of these projects. We also are...
Sorry, Lynette, I'm just going to ask all the speakers to kindly keep it very brief, because I'm just reminded that we want to allow time for the discussion. So apologies.
Okay.
I know you had planned a fairly short intervention anyway, but sorry to interrupt you.
All right, that's okay. So I therefore also contributing to SDG 9. So let me just move towards how we are engaging within the SDGPP platform. So with the Nyamira Integrated Agro Park, UNIDO brings its technical assistance towards conceptualizing, design, ecosystem development, funds mobilization, investment promotion, operationalization, and the M&D. And therefore,
Sorry, can I request folks online to please mute your mics? There's some echo. Sorry, Lynette. Thanks.
Yeah, and therefore, we are working very closely under the SDGPP to support us, especially in the area of ecosystem development, funds mobilization, investment promotion. And just to give very concrete examples, how the SDGPP is facilitating our engagement in this, we have been able, through the SDGPP, to engage Equity Bank towards, working with them and presenting the Nyamira Integrated Agro Park as a potential investment idea for them. And just yesterday, they were following up with us, and we did share the feasibility study that we have just concluded, which provides a good case in terms of the viability of the industrial park. And also we have been engaging development partners and the other private sector companies towards interesting them and raising awareness of the park. And because time is of essence, as I conclude, we therefore see a lot of support and importance for the SDGPP in terms of supporting us in funds mobilization, in the promotion of the park, and in achieving early financial closure, because these are key elements towards the success of the park. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lynette. Sorry to rush you. And folks, just to give you a sense, I think the magnitude of investment here is somewhere between $500 to $700 million each. And the idea is to have 6 parks across the country. So this is quite a transformative project. Rona Jengo from IFAD, are you with us? We can give you a quick minute to just speak about the rural finance and de-risking project for smallholder farmers.
Yes, Arif, I'm connected.
Yeah, we're going to request you to just take a minute, please, because we would like to really interact with teams here. So I apologize. If you can keep it very succinct, I would request maybe just go directly to the project itself and the slide on the project. Saruk, maybe you can assist the projectionist. Thanks. Ron, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Arif. I think just to pick it up from where you left, I think for us at IFAD, focusing on financing as opposed to SDG funding is very key for us in 2 key areas. First of all, of course, it gives us the opportunity to mobilize funds to scale, to be able to address the major challenges that we are seeing in agricultural development. But more importantly, really, is the fact that working with private sector partners addresses the issues of sustainability, because we know that once the private sector picks up an idea, then they can run with it even beyond the life of the programs or the projects that we may be engaged in. So I'm just going to quickly give you what we are doing at IFAD in terms of crowding in the private sector into agricultural financing. And we are doing this through a set of blended finance instruments, that address the issues of risk, because we do note that most of the financial institutions indeed have a liquidity, but then the formal credit that flows into agriculture is still very low. And the issue, of course, is their perception to risk. So one of the key instruments that we have is a credit guarantee scheme that then incentivize the commercial banks with adequate or excess liquidity to go into agricultural sector. But then also we are working with other financial institutions, the last mile financial institutions like SACCOs and microfinance banks that may not have liquidity, but then have outreach all the way into the rural areas. And this we are providing them with credit lines and wholesale finance that enables them to develop products that then can target these beneficiaries. Then the last tool that we are using is really on the ecosystem support. We provide technical assistance right at the macro level, working with the government, the central bank, to look at policies that then will encourage access to finance for smallholder farmers and SMEs in the agriculture space. Then on the meso side, we are also looking at really how do we build the capacity of financial institutions on the supply side, really to enable them develop products that would meet the requirements of the farmers. And then lastly, on the demand side, really working with the farmers and the SMEs, building their capacity so that they become attractable to the financial institutions. So for us, we see this as very instrumental and transformational. And how we do this is a proper market assessment to identify key entry points, what are the partner financial institutions that we are going to work with, and what are the relevant financial instruments that then we bring on board. And then lastly, of course, the issue of technology can never be overemphasized. Very key for us working with financial institutions to develop technology that then provide alternative delivery channels for their products and take it to scale and reach more. Because one of the key challenges that financial institutions have is transaction cost. Over to you. Thank you, Arif.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ron. A really excellent project, and it's received a lot of acclaim, and we're very excited to be part of this. Also to say that Ron is currently the co-chair of the Food and Nutrition Security Window, and IFAD in a couple of days hands over to World Food Program. I'd like to move on. We have half an hour, so we are moving along, and we will have time for discussion. I'd like to move on to innovative financing. And as I invite Anders from UNFPA to speak briefly, many of you were here at the session yesterday, but many of you weren't. I'd like to also just say that we had, as the SDG Partnership Platform, engaged with these colleagues in Silicon Valley, Stanford, Berkeley, and all the Silicon Valley universities, the Africa Diaspora Network in Silicon Valley, which is a really powerful network that's a partner with us, and also with a number of innovation ecosystem players in Kenya. And we launched in 2019 on the sidelines of UNGA, the SDG Innovation Lab at Rockefeller Foundation in New York, with two ministers and a presidential advisor joining as well. What was useful here was that it actually helped us work with a number of UN agencies, such as UNDP and others, to actually build and strengthen their own innovation hubs, as well as the government's 7 sites that they use here for innovation. We see the role of the platform coming where some innovations will bubble up to the surface as having been proven, but working in perhaps 1 or 2 counties only, and that needs scale, financing, and expansion. And that's where the platform can then support these innovation hubs to scale up when move from sort of early stage innovation to mainstream. On that, I'd like to invite Anders to maybe just give us a few words, please, from your perspective. As you came into Kenya, you heard about this deep dive, and tell us what you thought.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arif. I'm cognizant of time limitations, and also the fact that the audience here today is fellow UN colleagues primarily, including a number of RCs from other countries who want to take these ideas back to their countries. So let me start there, and let me say that I have served in a number of countries before coming to Kenya, but this is the first country context where we have an SDG partnership platform. And I really want to emphasize the importance of that. And I want to thank Stephen and the entire team at the RC's office for championing that and for having that. I'll tell you why. Because if you go back to the first day, James Mwangi, he said many smart things, but there was one thing that he said that really stood out, and that was, money will always chase good ideas. But those good ideas have to be brought to the surface, they have to be presented, they have to be exchanged. And guess what? The SDG Partnership Platform is the ecosystem, so to speak, where that exchange happens. So to any RC who might be out there, please create such a platform in your respective country. So on the DIP, I have to say that I think it's really fantastic that we now have a development impact bond for social impact in a country like Kenya. But I don't think it would have happened without the sort of collective work around it. The previous slide, you saw a young girl there, Anissa, I called her yesterday at the presentation. The important thing is that she actually gets the service that she is entitled to at a high quality. That is number one question. The other question with donors, those outcome funders, we have the traditional donors, but hopefully also private sector, they want to know that the money actually goes to her and to the service that she receives. So if we can devise a system whereby she gets good quality service and the outcome funder at the end of the day is guaranteed results, then we have really connected the micro level with the macro level in a fantastic way. And that's exactly what we have done with the DIP. Because of this, someone referred to it as sort of the Uber model. You have taken an Uber, and there is an app, and this is where Triggerize comes in, we explained yesterday, that allows Anissa to rate the service that she has gotten from one of the service providers in the field. If she has taken the service, if it is rated high quality, only then is the outcome funder actually paying for that service provision. And that's really very powerful, because if let's say between the service provider, the clinic, and the actual person who gives the service, they get $10, that $10 would actually only flow for the successful services. Now, there is a de-risking in here. This is a new word we are using, is that because we have the investor who comes in, and they will only pay, and they will make sure that this is happening. They will only pay for the successful visits. All those visits that may not have been successful, they will absorb that risk. So we are creating this environment where it can be evaluated, where there's accountability, and those the micro level with the macro level are connected in a way that really works in a very powerful way. And that's where I think the first, you see the check over there was handed over yesterday. The first 7 million has been put into this, where the UN is putting in under the SDG fund in New York is putting in the first 7 million of seed funding. We hope now we can be able to grow that. Our target is 20 million, but it doesn't have to stop there. And we are targeting 500,000 girls primarily to be supported with primarily interventions that will allow them to get testing for HIV, and also for them to avoid having teenage pregnancy. And why is that important? Because if we invest $10 at that level and avoid that, it will probably be a contribution of, let's say, 20-fold to the economy of the country or that community where that girl is. That's why it's so important. This is just to give you a flavor. I'll stop here, Arif, in the interest of time. But please, whatever questions you have, we are happy to discuss with you either here in the podium or on the margins of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anders. And full credit to Anders as new head of UNFPA. I mean, he came in and embraced this with both arms. So it was really exciting, and it's inspiring for us. I also want to acknowledge that this is a joint collective effort. So, strong support from WHO. I think Brendan is in the room somewhere, and also strong support from UNAIDS, in addition to our external partners. I'm going to ask the last two speakers again, if you wouldn't mind keeping it very brief. I'd like to ask Dr. Alfred Demo, if I may, to speak a little bit about ecosystem building, and maybe Mariana, you can guide her to that last slide. What we've been doing also in terms of engaging with private sector, one of the things that traditionally seems to have happened, and this is feedback I've received from many friends in private sector, is to say that the old days of, if you want to engage with private sector, you invite 20 of them for lunch, and then between main course and dessert, you ask them to open up their checks and write a little CSR check. That's not really private sector engagement in the true sense. What we really need to do is build trust, build strong relationships, but also build structures that are joint structures where you can work systematically over time, that don't depend on individuals. It becomes institutionalized. So around the platform, we've created a number of partnerships with private sector. As you see there, I won't go into each one of them. One example you saw yesterday when we launched the aggregation of all the financing networks in Kenya, now called Impact Invest in Kenya. Another interesting one is the finance and investment and trade network, FinTrinet. And for that, I'll just ask Dr. Alfred Demo, our new CEO for FinTrinet, to just give us a quick soundbite on FinTrinet and how you see the support of the UN and the platform in having established FinTrinet and where FinTrinet will become a national institution. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Arif, and the membership. My name is Alfred. I'm the CEO for FinTrinet. And as the word goes, FinTrinet stands for Finance, Investment and Trade. It stands for the Finance, Investment and Trade, and it's just an example of an ecosystem approach based from the private sector, agents, government, and the philanthropists, individual philanthropists. The rationale for this was basically as a result of the COVID, the impact of COVID in the country and across the world. Therefore, all the different stakeholders came together and said, what can we do? What kind of a contribution can we make towards the looking at the effect of COVID? How do we come out of these COVID scenarios? That was the origin of FinTrinet. And as we move on, what we have done basically is that we have been able to do targeting, getting all the stakeholders, people who have an interest. We have looked at people who have an interest in investment, people who have an interest in financing, and also the development partners. What we have done is we have been able to look at, with COVID, there came a serious slump of the economy. There was a serious effect on the investments. There was a serious effect on the small-scale businesses. People's business collapsed, and therefore there was need for us to re-energize the businesses back on board and making sure that we get back the economy from where it was. And what we have done is we have been able to get partners on board, and the UN has been able to assist us through the SDGPP platform in making sure that we take the lead in this kind of thing. What we are basically is a platform. We provide a platform for all the stakeholders to come forward, to come together, to support. We give avenues for our investors to invest in the country, and also give a platform for those who are interested in trade to trade equally, and making sure that whatever that is required in terms of facilitation, in terms of the means of how to do the investment, what is required in terms of trade, is available for the people to make that trade more easy, making it easy for them. And what we are actually doing as FinTrinet is coordinating all these various stakeholders who are interested in this kind of avenues, making sure that we are not competing with anybody else, but making sure that we provide a platform. And what the SDG has done for us is to be able to support us in running forward, in making sure that they give us the support we need, the technical support that we have been able to require to run that project business. We have been able to mobilize the ecosystem in terms of finances, the funding, the institutions of the banks, the insurance companies, the private sector organizations coming together, pulling resources together, making sure that we now do some kind of called as synergizing the avenues of investment and making things easy for the private sector and also the people who are also in who have been affected by the COVID to get back to business as usual. I think if I'll stop there, I'll be able to comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Demo. So, I mean, the image I get with Finternet, which is chaired by the Kenya Private Sector Alliance Foundation and co-chaired by us at the platform, is a large Kenya truck that wants to move to 10% GDP within 10 years, and in the next 3 years, focusing on agriculture, health, and manufacturing. And it has sort of 5 pistons: trade, finance, investments. Kenya at 60 to unlock FDI like Dubai just did recently, and the SDG Partnership Platform and the Impact Investing Kenya combination. So thanks so much. Last but not the least, Nelly Muriuki is here with us. We've done some really interesting work with UNDESA, including around TA pipeline and public-private partnership presentations with the Treasury and the platform on investment opportunities in Kenya. So Nelly, if I can ask you to just give us a very brief presentation. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Arif. So my name is Nelly Muriuki, and I work with the SDG Investment Fair team at UNDESA. And so actually the fair was launched in 2018 to respond to the need of bridging the financing gaps towards achievement of the SDGs. And actually Kenya was one of the 3 countries, together with Nigeria and Brazil, that participated in the first SDG Fair event. So what we do is that we invite countries to present their SDG advancing projects to investors with the aim of mobilizing private sector investments into SDG achievement, very much in line with the theme of this summit. So Kenya has participated twice again, in April 2021 and again in December 2021, where they came, the RCO team presented a best practice session. They presented the SDG Partnership Platform, which we can attest that there is a lot of interest to replicate such a platform to other countries. And I can see some other countries that have participated in the fair as well. I can see the RCO, the RC for Rwanda and Ghana. Thank you very much. So in our learning from in the 4 years that we have been running this, the SDG Investment Fair, is that one of the major challenges to an uptake of this investment by investors is actually the packaging of these projects. So and that is where again with the Kenya SDGPP we have just recently started a technical assistance facility where we come in to support projects at the pre-implementation stage. So at the very initial preparation stage, there are so many elements that go into packaging these projects to actually become bankable and attractive to investors. So we have been working with Arif and team, and we have so far worked with 2 projects to support them on various elements of technical assistance that they may need. So elements such as running feasibility studies, running risk assessments, environmental and social impact analysis. So we have been working with them to do this, and following the success, we will we are looking to scale up this facility to other countries as well. So as the DESA team, we can attest that this SDGPP platform is actually a credible, a very well effective platform that is impactful at the country level and can be scaled to other countries. And we actually encourage RCs present and otherwise to take up such a model.
Thank you so much, Nelly, and thanks for coming out all the way from New York, and our greetings to your colleagues. I think Dr. Nelly Muriuki may have left. Irene, do we know if Dr. Muriuki is there? We just give her a 1 minute input because she wasn't quite ready. Dr. Muriuki, did you want to just give us a very brief intervention and greetings from the ministry? I know you have a plane to catch. Okay, it looks like maybe she's not available. Okay, folks, so I think without further ado, we'd like to just open it up and get some reactions, thoughts, questions, clarifications. We'll be very happy to also note down these questions if we can get back to you also in further sessions we can plan between ourselves virtually. We'll be very happy to also present to your teams and share our experiences, learn from you, how you're doing this. So the floor is open. Thank you. Maybe before we open it up to everyone, I just want to see if any of the RCs would like to kick off and make a comment. Please, sir. Can somebody take a microphone?
Thank you very much, Stephen and colleagues from the Kenyan office, especially the members of the UN country team. I mean, that expose was quite interesting. I think I leave with 1 or 2 lessons from here, and that is the need for a coordinated platform for private sector engagement in the work of the UN system and also accelerating implementation of the SDGs. I think that is one critical lesson to address our, I hope we're only UN people here now, to address our silo approaches in the country teams. Not that agencies are not venturing into these areas. They are venturing into these areas, but it's so fragmented. And the approach itself is not sustainable in any way. And as Stephen, you said, even the language, we don't have people who know how to speak the language of the private sector. So how are you going to start building an ecosystem when people are speaking jargons you don't even understand? And we are coming from that old school of thought, as you said, have a lunch and then ask for them to give you some checks, as the case might be. Those days are gone. So we really need to change our approaches and try to see how we can bring them on board. And if there is one thing that has made this resonate with us, is the financing gap for SDGs. And if we don't change the approach, we are not going to be able to attract the financing required. And I'm happy that the UN ecosystem here is moving in that direction in Kenya. And we will call on you people to share experiences with our country teams online so that they can also draw on some of these lessons you are learning in this process. It will remain extremely critical to be able to realize the resources we are looking for, to even start talking about supporting governments to achieve the SDGs. We are still a long, long way behind. And thank you for inviting us here, but we will call on you. And when we knock on your door, please don't be upset, because we will go and tell our people that there is a place you can go and land to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very positive feedback. And just to let you know, we would be delighted. We've been doing presentations in a few countries already, so we'll be delighted to support you in every way we can. And also to link you up to some partners. We have partners in many of your countries as well, because we have co-created the Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance and many other networks that have hubs in other parts of Africa. So we have hopefully also some networks we can link up to you. Maybe I can see if any of the other RCOs or colleagues want to comment. Maybe if it's okay, I'll ask Charles as the RC to speak, and then pass it back to you if that's okay.
Yes.
Sorry for being a bit hierarchical, but we love to hear the reactions from the RCs as well. Can somebody pass on a mic there to the RC?
Thank you very much, and welcome back to you, Stephen. So really, let me join Ed in really congratulating the Kenya team, and I think the Trust Fund Office for setting up this event. I found it extremely useful as we all in the UN grapple with how we're going to really actualize some of this work. And I think the conversations you've had here around the platform and this tension between very internally focused platforms and multiples of them, and engaging more effectively externally with a UN that isn't at the center, but actually playing its role while letting others play their lead roles, is some of the stuff that we're really trying to grapple with. We're in the middle of developing a new cooperation framework and revamping our internal structures. And I think when I think about some of the cross-cutters and the issues that are important that you've identified here around digital, around some of the key things, education, agric, and particularly financing and how we get the private sector in, as we revamp the very traditional interagency working groups and results and pillar groups. It's how we fold this in to the work that they do and ensure that externally we're involving those with expertise. I mean, I share the issues around language that have been raised here, not just language, but I would say more broadly capacity and confidence to engage in this space and find the ways in which we strengthen that, not just in the RCO, but also across the agencies. I think when we sort of come towards the end and start doing reflections, I have a few to share there. But this has been very enlightening. In fact, the whole 3 days has been extremely useful, and I know that a number of us are taking away lots of insights to work with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can bring the mic back here, Kimathi, and then we'll see if Dr. Waiguru can speak after you.
Yes, thank you very much for this exciting and informative conversation, and especially this experience on how the platforms have been operating in Kenya is really very insightful. So I want just to highlight the issue of the capacity building of the country team, and also highlight the important message that has been echoed yesterday on having a pipeline of a bankable projects that country team need to have, so that whenever there is an opportunity to link up with the private investor, we can have the opportunity to grab the resources, because our projects are really bankable and are really technically sound. And I want to commend the work that DESA is doing, and I want to ask, if possible, that there could be a plan to build a strategic plan to build the capacity of country team across the world, and again, to help specific country that has shown interest to develop projects, because I believe, I remember in Rwanda we have started to develop, we had proposed a development impact bond, but this was not, this idea did not mature. So I want to hear from you, Desa, if you have like a plan to continue to support the country that have such kind of idea, and how we can operationalize that. And I want also to ask the question for Kenya about the development impact bond. I want to understand well who is playing the role of outcome funder, who is playing the role of independent evaluator, and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we start responding, I've been told, I've got a few notes that have come to me saying that Dr. Waiguru would like to make an intervention before she takes a flight. So, Dr. Waiguru, an intervention from you, and then we'll carry on. Dr. Waiguru, are you all right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please go ahead if you want to give us a short intervention. Thank you.
So thank you for this opportunity. I apologize for delay in providing remarks from the ministry, from the Chief Administrative Secretary, Arif. Would you allow me to do this?
Yes, thank you. In the interest of time, feel free to just give us kind of your overarching perspective on this partnership between the ministry and the UN Kenya SDG platform, please.
Okay. So the ministry is particularly grateful for the opportunity to have UN and other private partners within this country to be able to further the agenda towards SDGs. And it is important that we remember that when we are discussing SDGs, we are discussing matters about individuals. It's that woman, that girl, that boy in that village, maybe in adverse conditions or even at risk. And so number one is to point to the fact that these partnerships are very welcome, and the government, and particularly Ministry of Health, is open to making the environment more conducive for the same. I would want to iterate some words from Amina Mohammed, Dr. Amina Mohammed, who said, together with the United Nations, we have established the SDG Partnership Platform to accelerate the attainment of the SDGs in Kenya. So we are in this together, and we hope that in the near future, we'll be able to even build bigger dreams from our innovations within country, and we welcome each and every member here represented to our offices for discussions to further this agenda towards attaining our SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Waiguru, and we wish you a safe flight. We really want you to convey our sincere thanks to the ministry for our very strong partnership and for your leadership on the universal healthcare agenda. So, colleagues, we can go back. I think you had the mic. And oh, sorry, yeah. And then we have the RC there also after.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to join my colleague from Rwanda to commend the great work of the RC and the UNCT in Kenya for the great work on innovative financing, and specifically through the SDG Partnership platform in the spirit of the UN reforms. Mine is just to express interest in further follow-up and learning. Specifically, I'm in charge of partnerships and development finance, and I think it will be good to learn more, and I will get in touch, of course, with the team. It doesn't need to be answered here, to learn more and understand better on the operational challenges, specifically in the conceptualization and implementation of the SDG partnership platform. And secondly, it will also be good, I think, from my perspective and other colleagues from the region, to learn more about the key stimulants for the government of Kenya at all levels to have embraced the SDG partnership platform. And lastly, again, also to learn more from you on how you see the success of establishing an SDG partnership platform in countries where the financing ecosystem is conducive, but the private sector is still building up, especially with a few, private sector actors in the country. Thank you.
Seems okay, the mic is back on. Thank you very much. And I've made a note of these questions. These are really good and important questions. And so, as you said, maybe we can have a follow-on deeper discussion on many of these issues. And we do have, of course, constraints and challenges as well that we're also constantly thinking about, unblocking, etc. So it's not just a good news story. There's also a lot of pain and grief behind the scenes in terms of making things happen, moving things, etc. So we'll be happy to talk about that. The Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation in Sweden, commissioned by DCO, did a study on us in our early days. So we'll be happy to also share that study. And it's not just about the nice things, it's about what's cooking in the kitchen and what were the issues and the like. The RC, please, if can somebody hand over the mic to the, okay, please.
Thank you, Arif, from the Kenya RC office, and I would really want to commend you for this work, because I think we are all in our bubbles, especially coming from an island, thinking that we are reinventing the world, and we put in our cooperation framework the fact that the engagement with the private sector is a programming principle. And what we had started to initiate was, I think we are in the process of signing a declaration of intention with several sectors where we wanted to engage with the private sector so that we see how the private sector could actually be part of the acceleration process. But we've been approaching it the old way. What I'm learning here is all the engagement, even the ecosystem that you are talking about, are part of the enabling factors. And I do take it as an invitation from us to really reach out, as you offered, to try and understand what it takes to go beyond the old way of doing things and see how the private sector can actually be part of the process in the leading way, as my colleague said, not just as thinking that we'll be pulling them into something without understanding their language. So I look very much forward to maybe tapping into the different expertise, because many of these UN agencies are in all our UN cities. But we tend to do our work based on only the expertise we have in country without realizing that next door we do have expertise that can help us. So we'll try and tap on all those using, hopefully, the SDG platform here to see how we can advance our own agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, RC, can someone please hand the mic over to RC?
I wanted colleagues to react more, but I want just to take the floor for the following aspect. First of all, really to commend Stephen, my brother, and Arif, and Madine, and all the team for the wonderful work you are doing here with the government of Kenya and the private sector. And really, we are also very happy of how the meeting is going, and we learn a lot. And I'm sure it will be really improving the way that we are supporting countries in achieving SDGs. Second, I think, and this is my mantra as well, I think that Stephen put it very rightly on three aspects that he mentioned. And we kept on discussing, and I was telling Isa when we had breakfast this morning, that maybe this is not new, but repetition is also good. Scale, sustainability, and of course, from moving from funding to financing. We should not be inward looking, but how we support countries on their priorities. And I think things will fly if countries see that it is their priorities. And I always say to my countries where I'm serving that I'm your civil servant. I'm not the one who signed off in September 2015 on the SDGs. It's the government who signed off. Last 2 points I want to mention is, and I think both Matthias and Emma mentioned it. In Rwanda, we have a very conducive environment, and we are supporting the country in innovative national financing framework on innovation, on youth connectivity. We all know all this ecosystem. I think that's also an aspect that could bring together. But I have a question on the private sector. I think the problem we are faced with is that we need to get the private sector on board. But private sector is not equal or even. In many African countries, 80% of the private sector is informal. How do you engage with them? What type of means you can get to have them on board? But saying just private sector will not unlock. So the granularity of the analysis is very important, even on the financing aspect. So I will end by suggesting two things. One, I said it for the INFF, and we are trying to do that. I think it would be good, maybe with the support of DCO, DESA, and others, that all the great things that UN is doing be transformed in knowledge product. But knowledge product suppose a rigorous vetting process, and then create a network that keep the ball rolling in supporting each other. And as Stephen mentioned, learning, and Arif, you mentioned it, from challenges, so that we can leapfrog and not in each country starting off the way that we are doing. I think it would be really something that we could put together on the interesting aspect. And last point, I think it's, in my view, and I said it the first day, I think it's important that partnership will not be seen only with donors from donor funding countries, but how Africa can tap on its diaspora, not only on the financing, but expertise. The first most educated second generation in US are Africans, even before the Asians. You know, how we can tap on, intercontinental expertise, the think tanks that are going, the expertise that we have, and that we could, piggyback on that would be also how we can really broaden South-South cooperation. As Rwanda have, they have a specific Rwanda cooperation, which is dedicated to South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation. And last, really on the capacity, I think you start doing this economist network. It's important. But in my view, the problem we are faced with UN, we have a lot of capacity, but I call them hidden talent. You see, Stephen, he's RC. People will quote him as RC. Not as the qualification he has as Stephen, as Dr. Stephen, or Arif, if you're banking. They will see you, but they won't see the banker behind that. How do we harness the hidden talent within UN and put it in a capacity that would keep the UN moving forward? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And all these comments are, very gratifying to hear as well. But I think there's a lot of work to be done and some very interesting suggestions that have come forth. Before I ask Stephen to wrap up and close for us, we have one a very happy assignment, and maybe Stephen can officiate over that. When we started the partnership platform in the second incarnation, by the way, the third incarnation is how we're going to support the new cooperation framework in a much stronger one UN way across the entire cooperation framework. So that remains to be seen, and we'll keep you posted. Stay tuned. On the experience in the second generation SDG partnership platform launched in 2017, we only had 2 UN agencies who signed on the multi-partner trust fund that Jennifer Topping and team kindly helped us construct. I think there was a lot of, well, let's wait and see. Let's understand what this beast called the SDG platform is, and what is it really going to be doing, and where's the value, and all that. It was UNDP and it was UNFPA. And there were actually, I think, more, if I might use the word, incestual reasons for doing that, because UNDP was also the RC at the same time, and UNFPA because the RC had just left his post as UNFPA director. So it was kind of a familiarity or pressure or whatever you call it. But it took 2 years before anyone else joined onto the MPTF. And here we were, you know, selling the merits of a platform, etc. But people were watching and waiting. And then we started unlocking research, unlocking market development, unlocking innovative financing. We started unlocking concrete investment pipelines. I think we came to about 160 million at that time. And all of a sudden, within the next year, we've got 12 agencies signed on, including the World Bank. And so we have pleasure today to close this meeting, notwithstanding we'll have a final comment from the RC, to actually invite IOM Kenya to sign on to the SDG Partnership Platform Multi-Partner Trust Fund with none other than Jennifer Topping herself, who fortunately is with us in Kenya today. And so, colleagues, Emra, if you are ready and you have the documents ready, we can ask RC to officiate over this little signing.
Thank you, Arif. Just a clarification. Do you want to do that right now, or you want to close out this session first? How do you want to do it?
I thought we'd do it right now because I know that our friends at UNCDF and UNDP have been eagerly waiting to move on to the next session on their innovative financing products. So it's your call, really.
So very happy to do that. And then what, we come back and we close this?
No, so we would close it.
Close it and then do that. All right,
and
sorry
we'll let,
for my misunderstanding.
Take over the show.
All right, very good. In which case, I know that there was a very specific question, I think from Rwanda, about outpayers and so on the DIB. And Anders was prepped to give some answers on that. But maybe in the interests of time, we might just suggest a bilat on that. Is that all right? Okay. Look, 5 very quick points from me, having listened to what was an extremely rich exchange. First of all, the question about building platforms of this kind in an environment where the private sector may not be as developed or as extant or as diverse as it is in a country like Kenya. I have to admit, I wish I had done things in the reverse order and had gone on to be resident coordinator in Gabon after having had the opportunity to serve as resident coordinator in Kenya, because there's an awful lot that I now know about private sector engagement, having gone up a steep learning curve in Kenya, that I would have brought to Gabon, where the private sector is much more in the extractives. It's much smaller in terms of numbers of actors, although it's pretty large in terms of its profitability. So I do think you have to adapt your approach to different contexts, for sure. And I do think it's about being quite strategic about choice of sectors. So we had the big 4 given to us by His Excellency the President as the national priorities, and the ask to have the private sector aligned behind that. It'll be different in different settings. In Gabon, we would have done it around the green transition, I'm sure, and around working with the extractives to go to a more sustainable model. So then that takes me, my brother Fode, you're absolutely on the money. We need to institutionalize and perennialize this conversation so that there's really ongoing mutual learning between different country teams about how we're engaging in very different settings with our private sectors. I think there will be a lot that is country specific, but there's also an awful lot that can be learned. So I really liked your idea about anchoring that in our economists, but those of us also who actually have extant platforms can then anchor it in those secretariats as well. So let's really have that as an outcome of this. Issa, like you, we're working with the private sector the foundation of our new cooperation framework that we hope to sign, inshallah, next month. And the way we're thinking about it is that through working on those 4 windows, we've built a muscle. We've built a reflex now as to how to think in any given space. Is there a role for the private sector as a multiplier and, in a sense, a sustainer of what we're doing? And we have these sort of 4 practices that I mentioned before, you know, market identification, financial instrument innovation, ecosystem development, and then ultimately birthing public-private partnerships that are very specific. And so we almost, what we want to have going forward in our cooperation framework is that as a kind of a mantra. And when you think about a new program engagement in sector X, that you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself, well, hang on, is there a way I can use those 4 instruments, or maybe some others we haven't thought of yet, to imagine a piece of this that the private sector can come into? Let's see if we live up to that challenge, but it's our common determination to try to do so, which takes me to Eddie's point about the importance of having coordinated platforms. We've done it this way in Kenya. You'll all do it or are doing it in different ways in your own settings. But I do think that it has proven to be vital to have something resembling a platform that operates in a transverse way, operates across and in support of the country team, and that point hammering home that it's in support ultimately of the agencies, funds and programs who will actually deliver. But to have it anchored at the level of the RC, I think that that's consistent with the spirit of the reforms, consistent with delivering as one. And it also takes me on to my final point, which is let's turn this around. We're interested in working with the private sector for all the reasons that we've discussed this morning, but why is the private sector interested in working with us? And I think that that's interesting to reflect on. One of them is because there are altruists who are really sincerely interested in delivering on the SDGs. But a second one is that actually they also recognize that there is a buck to be made out of this. I mean, as we've hammered home today, $6 billion in the delivery of primary healthcare in Kenya. And I can imagine that the numbers won't be that different in your parts of the world. So there is, as Arif always says, the triple bottom line. Companies can make money by also doing social good and doing so sustainably. And so part of the reason that they come to us is to help them identify those opportunities. Part of the reason that they come to us is to hold their hands and to be the kind of the moral guarantor and what we would call in my part of the world, the good housekeeping seal of approval, you know, to a particular investment. Well, so don't sell that cheap. First of all, we have to do our due diligence, but secondly, there's a price to be exacted from the private sector in working with us as well. So there's advantage to us also. And then finally, back to this notion, Eddie, indeed, of a single platform, that the private sector wants to work with the United Nations, but finds us extremely confusing, very fragmented, a soup of different acronyms, a soup of different procedures. And so to the extent that by putting together a single platform, we can reduce that complexity, we can have a one-stop shop, we can be the marriage brokers in the platform to introduce to the UNIDOs, to the UNAIDS when Medin was sitting next to me, and that we can really link them and simplify that relationship. That also, I think, is critically important. So those are all things that I think the platform model can do. That was what I wanted to say in conclusion, Arif. We had set ourselves the task of doing a deep dive. I think we did a very, very deep dive, but I hope you all still have breath in your lungs coming back up to the surface. And I think it is only the beginning of conversations and building on relationships that have been forged in the course of these 3 days. My brother RCs, and by the way, to the women in the room, we're at 50-50 globally in RCs, so it was a statistical accident that we've ended up only with brother RCs in the room today. But to my brothers, it's for me to thank you for giving the time, giving of your expertise. It's really been an honor to have you guys with us for these 3 days. And I really think that there's an enormous amount that we can learn and do together through partnership of this kind, really to propel Africa still further towards the SDGs. So thanks a million for being with us.
Thank you for that, Stephen. And one detail I should have mentioned, which maybe is worth mentioning, is that for the last 7 years, the platform has been almost entirely funded by private sector and philanthropy. It's not on any UN budget line, including myself. So, you know, there's a bit of value that one needs to bring. It's like a golf course, you know, your subscribers will walk away if they don't get value. I'd like to maybe invite Jennifer Topping to join us, and Emra, Deputy Head of IOM. If you are available, we can maybe use this little podium for a mini signing ceremony. And maybe the camera can focus this way, and Stephen, maybe you can witness this.
How and where would you like us?
Maybe you can come in the center. The two of you are signing, and then Stephen will.
Stephen, you've got a nicer pen. We'll use yours.
There we go. All right, over to you.
The last page, actually. Yes.
I don't know what date it is.
26.
So whilst we witness the signing ceremony, just to let you know, the agencies that have signed on to the MPTF so far are UNDP, UNFPA, UNICEF, UNAIDS, FAO, World Food Programme, UNIDO, IFAD, and we have now recently signed with UNHCR, and we have 2 other agencies in the offing that are hoping to sign within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the platform.
Yes, well, we are happy for this. Thank you.
No speech, really just to say we're absolutely delighted to see this partnership growing and building out even further. And as has been spoken about, that the power of that platform approach in Kenya is something that is really remarkable, and it really does set a distinct brand for the MPTF, which is underpinning the private-public partnership of the SDG Partnership Platform, and now will grow and build out also to support the wider cooperation framework in Kenya. We had some conversations this morning with the team, so it's wonderful to see the beginning of that continued build-out. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And maybe I'll just add on the subject of IOM or on the subject of migration. So I think one of the things that we've learned through the platform is that it is very important to hook into mandate areas that are really transverse. So in the case of the migration file, the whole message of the Global Compact on migration is that we need a whole of government, whole of society, and whole of UN system approach to helping our countries to arrive at well-managed and orderly frameworks, policies, and programs for migration. And so actually, the migration file, although we're only signing on today, it really lends itself very, very well, I think, to the kind of whole of UN system approach that this partnership is designed to engender. So really delighted to have you on board, Emra. Thanks so much.
Colleagues, this brings us to the end of the session on the SDG Partnership Platform. I'd like to once again thank Dr. Jackson, Anders, Medine, Lynette, our esteemed panelists, Millicent, Dr. Alfred Demo, all of you for your strong support. I apologize once again that we didn't give you a lot of time to speak, but hopefully we'll maybe set up some virtual sessions and deep dives with multiple countries and bring you back again. So thank you so much for your participation. I think I'm going to hand back to Nurdin. Munir, would you like to take over? Yeah, thank you.
No, just, yeah, you can.
Let me ask the voice. Very stronger and follow me. We need arms. You need arms?
Maybe if there's a mic. It's better.
No,
keep this one here.
Really?
Yeah, keep it here.
That's a mic there.
Oh, this is a mic.
When are you going to announce the video for?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. They have it.
Who will announce the video?
They run from tech guys. Let me just make sure that. Can we do a tea break for that room to just? Colleagues, just in the intervention of this 2 sessions, may I suggest we have a tea break or a coffee break? We have some refreshments in the back, just to get a cup or a mug and then come back to your seats again. We are running late with time, so we would love you to be brief on that. Thank you. We're going to start in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Dear colleagues, I'm
We can do a lot of things there. No, it's not even
Colleagues, we are about to start. If you did not